All right, get ready to rethink stress, because that's what we're diving deep into today. We always hear about how bad stress is for us,
Yeah, stress is toxic, right?
right? But today, we're looking at the research that shows how stress can actually be a source of
Or
growth,
resilience.
even connection. And we're drawing insights from the upside of stress for this deep dive.
Sounds fascinating. I'm ready.
So this book starts off with a study about hotel housekeepers, which, we all know that's got to be a physically demanding job.
Yeah, they're on the move all day long.
Right. And a lot of them, they don't really think of what they do as exercise, even though it is.
Yeah, and researchers, well, they decided to test something. They took a group of these housekeepers and told them, your work, it's actually really good exercise.
Wait, so they just told them that? And they didn't change anything about their actual routine?
Nope, nothing. They kept everything exactly the same.
And what happened?
Well, the results were honestly kind of amazing. The housekeepers who were told that their work was exercise, they actually lost weight.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Body fat, too.
Mhm.
Even their blood pressure improved. And get this, the control group, the ones who weren't told anything, no changes at all.
So it all comes down to how we think about our days.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even matter what we're actually doing. It's just how we perceive it
Yeah.
that impacts our well-being.
It really is amazing, isn't it? It shows the power of our mindset.
Hmm.
And this is where we start to see how seeing all stress as negative can backfire on us.
Okay, so if our mindset is so important, how do we switch from seeing stress as this awful threat to seeing it as a challenge? Because, when I'm facing a deadline, my brain, it doesn't automatically jump to, this is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's really important to remember the difference between chronic stress,
Right.
the overwhelming kind. That is definitely harmful.
Yeah.
But then there's the kind of stress that energizes us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that stress response, think of it like your body's way of rising to a challenge. Your heart rate goes up. You get that rush of adrenaline and bam, you have all this energy and focus.
So when athletes get in the zone,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
their challenge response to stress actually helping them perform better.
Yeah, and the thing that makes the difference is all in your head, how your brain is interpreting those physical sensations you're feeling.
So it's two different responses, right? You have the threat response and the challenge response. Both of them, you've got those physical changes happening. But with the challenge response, you see the situation, even if it's hard, as something you can handle.
So these athletes, even though they're under all this pressure, they're channeling that stress into this challenge response, and that's what helps them perform better.
Exactly.
Wow.
And there's actually research that supports this, like the Try Your Social Stress Test. Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
They put people in these really stressful social situations,
Okay.
things like public speaking,
Okay.
and they measure their stress response. And guess what they found? The people who see the situation as a challenge instead of a threat,
What?
they do better.
Really?
Yeah. And it's not just athletes either.
Oh, wow. Studies that look at students taking exams, same thing. The ones who see it as a challenge instead of,
Like the end of the world.
yeah. They perform better academically.
Wow. So what you're saying is, if we're constantly trying to suppress our stress response, we could be missing out on some of the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different way to think about it, right? But the research suggests that this shift is possible and it can have a huge impact on how we deal with pressure.
So how do we actually make that shift happen? How do we get from, oh no, everything is awful and terrible, to bring it on, I'm ready for this challenge?
Well, one way is to think about your values. When you've got that strong sense of what matters most to you, it's way easier to see stressful situations as just temporary hurdles, not these huge impossible threats.
Okay, so we're talking about stress and meaning, right? I know for me, when I'm not working towards something, like something challenging, I actually feel stressed, almost like I'm not living up to my potential. Is that what this research is talking about?
Exactly. It's not go out and find the most stressful thing you can. It's more about understanding that stress often just comes along for the ride when you're pursuing goals, when you're pushing yourself. There's actually this global stress survey over 125,000 people. And guess what they found?
What's that?
The people who said they were experiencing stress also said their lives felt more meaningful.
Wait, hold on. So the things that stress us out are the things that actually give our lives meaning. I need to process that for a second.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? But it makes sense when you think about it, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
The things that give our lives that sense of purpose, of richness, relationships, careers, personal growth, they're also the things that tend to cause stress. It's that whole no pain, no gain thing, but on a deeper level.
Okay, that's making more sense now. It's like, if you're not pushing yourself, taking those risks, I mean, are you even really living?
That's the question, isn't it? And that lack of engagement, that can actually lead to its own kind of stress, too.
Yeah.
That feeling of being stuck, unfulfilled. And there's this really great story in the book about a woman, Lennon Flowers.
Okay.
She lost her mom when she was younger, and she felt so alone in her grief.
Yeah, I mean, death is such a tough subject for people to talk about.
Absolutely. And Lennon, she realized that a lot of people feel this way. So she co-founded this organization, the Dinner Party. They bring together people who've lost someone, and they have these potluck dinners together.
That's kind of an interesting concept.
It's amazing. It's a safe space for them to share their stories and connect with other people who just, get it.
That's really powerful, actually. It's like she took this awful thing that happened to her, and she turned it into this opportunity to connect with people. It's like stress, but like good stress.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It can be a catalyst.
Yeah.
And that whole idea of finding meaning in the face of adversity, that's really at the heart of this whole book. But it actually goes even deeper than that. It also talks about this idea of like post-traumatic growth.
Post-traumatic growth. So, like, you go through something terrible, but then you come out on the other side, like, stronger, wiser. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. And there's actually real research on this. So this researcher, Mark Siri, he tracked over 2,000 people for 4 years. He was studying the link between, the difficult stuff that happens in your life and your well-being overall.
Okay.
And what he found is that people who've experienced some adversity, not a ton, but a moderate amount, they actually had better mental and physical health outcomes.
Really? Than the people who'd had really easy lives?
Yes, and better than those who'd been through really significant trauma, too. It's like the sweet spot of adversity.
So what, going through some tough stuff can actually help us learn to cope better?
Yeah.
It makes us more resilient?
That's exactly it. Now, it's not that trauma is a good thing. Let's be clear about that. Nobody's saying that. But this research, it suggests that even in those painful, challenging experiences, there's potential for growth. It's all about how we choose to look at it and, more importantly, what we take away from it.
So how do we actually use this information? It's cool to think about stress differently, but like, how do I actually go from thinking stress is going to kill me to stress is my friend?
It's all about changing how you see it. Instead of thinking of stress as something you have to avoid no matter what if you looked at it like a tool or a chance to grow, maybe even a way to connect with people more?
I do like that. Instead of letting stress control me, I can like take all that energy and use it to make me stronger.
Exactly. And there are some things you can actually do to make that shift, like start paying more attention to how your body feels when you get stressed. So when you feel your heart racing or your hands start sweating, instead of freaking out, try to think about those feelings differently. See them as signs that your body's getting ready to tackle something.
Yeah, so instead of thinking, oh no, I'm so stressed right now, I can be like, okay, this is just my body giving me the energy to do this.
Exactly. And don't forget about your values. Like we talked about before, it's super powerful to remember what matters to you. So when something stressful comes up, just remind yourself why it's important. Like, what are you working towards? What are you trying to protect? If you keep that bigger purpose in mind, you'll start seeing the stress as a stepping stone instead of a brick wall.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, if you're really struggling, don't be afraid to talk to someone about it, right?
Absolutely. When you share what you're going through, you realize you're not alone. And it can even make your relationships stronger. Just like, remember Lennon Flowers and the dinner party. Sometimes sharing your struggles can bring you closer to people.
This whole conversation has honestly made me see stress in a whole new light.
Yeah.
It's not about pretending stress doesn't exist, because let's be real, it's everywhere. But it's more about changing how we deal with it so we can use it to help us grow instead of letting it, like, take over.
Well said. At the end of the day, you have the power to decide how stress affects you. So embrace those challenges, connect with the people around you, and never forget how strong you really are.
So for everyone listening, here's something to think about. Think about a time you felt really stressed recently. Was it a moment where you had that, what was it called? That threat response?
Yeah.
Could you have maybe seen it as a challenge instead? An opportunity for growth? Or even a chance to connect with someone? How could changing your perspective, even just a little bit, change how you see that experience? And that wraps up our deep dive on stress. See you next time.